Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay at home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight, got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet, cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Home Dad Chat. Boy, has it been a week. I tell you, I am exhausted. I'm sure you are too. Kids running around, all kinds of activities. And then, of course, for some people, lots of work on top of that. So, it's been one of those doozies. How about you, Danny?
And snow.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and snow. That's right.
Yeah. So my kids were off on Friday. I don't know why. They were just off on Friday. And then my two little kids were, well, they're like 8 and 10, so not that little, were off from school on Monday for parent teacher conferences at the elementary school. The other two went, but
Yes.
so I'm like, okay. So that's 4 days, 3 with all four of them, and then with the other two. And I'm like, okay, I remember why I was so happy when my kids went to school. I love these guys, but I'm just like, I'm not getting anything. And everything that I normally do, and I don't ever feel like I get enough done anyway, but everything I'm doing is being overwhelmed by what they're doing. They're making more messes. Of course, they're eating way more food. The kitchen's dirty, way more dishes and everything else. I'm just like, what are you guys doing? But again, when they were home all the time, that was my standard day.
Yeah.
And I really, it gave me a moment to look and go, wow, I have a really good life.
I
I'm very grateful.
I had a similar I guess feeling about being out with my youngest actually this weekend, because at one point we were walking into Myers, and I just had this feeling of like, this is so much fun, like getting to spend time with her and like seeing her just enjoy going shopping and just all of that. And I'm like, I was just thinking back to when I was around them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it was fine, but at the same time, it was like, okay, I'm in that mode, like
Right.
it's not really all that enjoyable. It's more of like I'm in job mode type of
Yep.
deal. And now that I have a full-time job and, dadding at the same time, it's like it's different. It felt different. And it was like this, wow, like I'm actually enjoying spending time with her and like
Mm-hmm.
just being goofy with her and like having this moment. And it was just an interesting, um I don't know what you want to call it. I would say recollection, but I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. But anyway, just the revelation, that's what it was. This is
Mm-hmm.
revelation of like, wow, like this is really special. Like I I think I took for granted some of the time that I spent with the kids, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I now see like even more of the value of getting to spend time with them in
Yeah.
these situations where, we can go do something one on one, or even just the two
Yeah.
of them, and just really be like, okay, like this is quality time well spent type of deal. And
Bingo.
it's not like okay, we're in this situation, let's just grind through and get to the next thing. It's more of a like, all right, we're in this moment, we can enjoy it and see where it goes. And
Mm-hmm.
it was so weird to like come to that revelation like in the moment too. I was
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
this is like real time here. Okay. But it was really cool. So
Mm-hmm.
um
And how
yeah.
important that time is for us and for them. I it's been a job. This is a job,
Oh yeah.
definitely.
Hell
But
yeah.
when we brought the kids home and from the hospital, and I'm there full time, and Marnie
Hmm.
got maternity leave, so she was there for her 6 weeks or whatever it was, and that time was the best. Just the bonding that we did You know, and granted, the kids will never remember that. That's not, you know, they weren't even, they were just little lumps. They, you know, they were lumps and they cried and they didn't know how to talk or anything. They didn't know anything going on, but just that bonding was so good. And that establishment of, you know, in our family, mommy and daddy and the baby, and then bringing in with the little sister, little brother, little sister, whatever. It was just amazing. And I loved that, really. And that's why I look back on, and that's why I always think I really want a baby. I want another baby. I do not, in fact, want another baby, but I do. I miss having the baby around, the sounds and the smells, the good smells.
Yeah.
The good smells. And just how they I guess need you, you know. And I think tonight's guest, who I'm very excited and a little nervous to have on, is going to really help us out with that part of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, and this guest too, honestly, I think speaks into the whole idea of just family and the values that a lot of us see as being what we're striving for, both as an organization and as just individuals. And so I'm really excited to speak with him. And two, he's a part of a former sponsor from the convention, so that's going to be really cool as well.
Yep.
So we'll leave all of you all in a bit of suspense while we get ready to bring them on.
It's the only cliffhangers we got, guys. This is the best we can do. You know, just a little bit. And no, you'll be right back.
That's all I got. So we'll be right back. Become a member of the National At-Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support. Connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At-Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At-Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. All right, and we are back. And like we said, we have a very special guest with us tonight from Family Values at Work. We have Sammy. Is it Chavin Grant? Is that
close? It's Chavin Grant.
Chavin Grant. Oh, I should have asked before. And see, there's the unprofessional part of us being podcasters.
No,
Danny.
That's all good.
This is why
I have had lifelong friends who can't say my name. It's all good.
Well, yeah, I figured I'd take a shot at it. So thank you for being gracious and letting me down easily on that one. So yeah, but hey, welcome to the show. I honestly am just super stoked that you're here. Danny's really excited that you're here as well. And just the conversations back and forth through email. I do have to be honest, I have been so busy with my new job that I totally didn't even look at the calendar to be like, oh yeah, we're interviewing somebody tonight. And Danny's like, well, it's all right here. So
yeah. Like, okay, I'm ready. I'm a little nervous. Here's the email. I'm going to send you all the questions again. We're ready to go. And he's like, what? Like, tonight's the night. Look at the calendar. He's like, oh wow, you got guests, because we've got guests, through the next month and a half or whatever. I'm like, yeah. Because we took a long break after Christmas and
I love that we're getting back into it. New Year, spring starting, perfect time for it.
So it's
exactly.
Great. Yeah.
But so tell us a little bit about who you are and how did you get involved with Family Values at Work?
Oh man, this is my favorite question. So, my name is Sammy. I am for Family Values at Work. I am our federal policy manager. And basically, what that means is I spend my time paying attention to whether or not the federal government cares about families and trying to urge them to do something about it. But how I ended up here is I actually studied neuroscience and French in undergrad because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And surprise, I don't do that. But it totally panned out because I live in Washington, D.C., which, working with the federal government, it's a good place to be. But I moved here right out of college and kind of like made some friends into my family. And we all moved here unemployed and we all still live here. And I took the first job that would take me. And it was kind of like a
Hmm.
nothing burger job. And actually, ironically, I tell this story a lot. That job didn't have any paid sick time. And so in my first 6 months of working there, I was really sick and I had a really limited amount of vacation days. So the like second or third month I was working there, I was faced with the choice of, do I go to work sick? Do I stay home? And I had already bought my plane tickets home for the Jewish holiday. So I was like, all right, guess I'm going to work feeling under the weather because I did not want to go see my family for the first time since I had moved. So that was kind of my personal entree into even being cognizant of like vacation, sick time, leave. And funnily enough, I didn't like love the first random job I took when I moved to DC. So I was volunteering at night and learning a lot about community advocacy and organizing. And I was volunteering on the DC paid family leave campaign. So that was like what I was doing with my time. And then I learned about federal advocacy as a job. And I helped with a fly in day, which is the lingo for when you bring advocates to town to talk about what they care about. And I was working, oh, wow, this really is a cyclical journey. I worked for Lamaze International. So we were advocating for making it easier for women to have bring children into the world and be birthing parents. And so I was doing all that and I learned that federal advocacy is really exciting. So I switched jobs and I was working on hunger and food insecurity and I was focused on the federal government. And then I, like many people, was like, I'm going to go to grad school. And then I was in grad school and I was doing every single project on paid leave. And I thought about it, I was like, oh, maybe I should, combine the thing that got me excited in advocacy in the first place with the fact that got to have a job to pay all my bills. And then I found this opening at Family Values at Work, and they were hiring their first ever full-time person to work on federal advocacy. And now it's been almost 2 years, and I love working here, and I love
Nice.
taking the thing that like started my own consciousness about why benefits matter in my personal life is now what I work on for everybody else. So long-winded, very circular, but it's all kind of connected. And there's an argument that studying science is related to caring about this, that, we can all massage it. It all had a purpose, except for the French. That just was for me, I guess.
That's what
Well,
you get to use when you're angry and you want to say something that no one else will understand.
That's actually true. It is fun to teach people like swears in French, but that's outside the scope of this. We can do that after
it
the
is, yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. And we could talk about French. I love French. It's the
Oh
one
my
language I
gosh.
wish I could learn, but I
You
I haven't
totally can.
done it. I haven't done it yet, let's say. So
Not yet. Not yet.
yeah, not yet.
I have a friend who homeschools his kids, and that's the language that he's teaching them is French because that's what he grew up in France. So,
Oh,
and
very cool.
his family were missionaries over there, and so he grew up there, knew the language, and then he's continued on through it. And now he's teaching his 4 kids. So, yeah. But you have quite the journey. My goodness.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
great.
it's like a very winding road, but it all feels really connected.
Yeah,
So sometimes
definitely.
when people ask me, why do I do this? I'm like, well, first I have to explain what was going on. Then I realized like it's a job to do advocacy and it's not just a thing that people volunteer for.
Mhm.
And then I got to put it all together and it took like, 7 years, but here we are. And I
Yeah.
put all the pieces together.
I mean, it's
But
very
I
fluid.
love that it's the science of it. It's the learning and the education that you get into,
Yeah.
and that develops into what sounds like a passion project.
Oh,
Like loving
it's
your
not
work. Right.
That's what
It
makes it
sounds
fun.
amazing. So
Yeah, no, it really is. And sometimes I think I get asked a lot, like, how can you possibly stand to do federal politics and federal advocacy? And I was like, well, if I don't do it, if we all get sick of it and we just kind of let the government do whatever, we know it's not really been working for
yeah.
decades. So somebody has to get in there, and it's
Yeah.
better to be doing it on something that I care so deeply and so personally about, because I think there's something really nice about being able to like embody change that you care deeply and personally about. And I think
Yeah.
everybody can do it, whether it's your job or something you kind of do like this with a podcast and bringing
Hmm.
dads together to talk about the issues that are bubbling up for them. I think it's
Yeah.
awesome that
I
y'all have this space.
Before the pandemic, I was involved with the Dad 2.0 Summit. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or
Oh,
not.
yeah, I've seen that
Um,
online.
but basically one of their like big sponsors was Doveman Plus Care and
Yeah.
Unilever. And so they were huge in that arena of trying to basically forge just any kind of conversation with the government about paternity leave and just that whole conversation. And I remember like going to the first convention, and I didn't really I didn't really have any like notion of the fact that some people didn't have paternity leave and that kind of thing, like
Yep.
because I'd had jobs prior that where it was just kind of known. And then to run into people were like, I didn't have it, or it was one of those things where it was like you could be threatened with losing your job. And I was like, I never would have thought of any of that. And and then I started a podcast up prior to this one and started interviewing dads and got like all these stories from guys who were in different situations with, paid with their paternity leave, what they could and couldn't do. And it was really eye opening to me. And so, like, just following that along, and then the pandemic hit, and so it seemed to kind of fizzle away, but I kept hearing small whispers of it, like on the media in different avenues and things like that. And so you said you started your job like 2 years ago, which would have been about the time that things sort of like Dad 2 and the pandemic hit, Dad 2 kind of went away, the pandemic hit, and then here you are, like almost like right there in that spot. So like, what is the status of the movement on paid family and medical leave now that, you know, it was one of those things where, like I said, I was there and then now I'm not. So I'm curious, like, where are things with that now? Because it seems like you're right there in it.
Yeah, so I feel like it might be helpful for folks who aren't as versed to go back just to kind of level set for what we do have and what we don't have in this country. So 30 years ago, actually this month, Bill Clinton signed, Congress passed and then it was implemented in August, if we want to get hyper technical about it. But 30 years ago, the Family and Medical Leave Act was passed. So that is FMLA, which a lot of people assume is paid, but that's actually a really unfortunate misconception. So what FMLA does is it protects people's jobs, but not everybody. So it's a very limited policy. And it's got a lot of particulars about how long you've been at a job or how big the company is. But the basics of what it provides is 12 weeks of unpaid leave, either for welcoming a new child into your family, or if you have something going on and you need to take care of yourself, if you need to be a caregiver. And then it was updated 20 years ago to include military deployment leave. So there are certain things about FMLA that kind of set a nice baseline for us. The best part is job protection, because I think nobody is gonna, like what you were just saying, Brock, folks who had their jobs threatened, if they wanted to take time off, that's
Hmm.
like the baseline in terms of where family values at work comes to the work in what
Yeah.
we're advocating for. We want it to be paid, and I can get super nitty gritty and nerdy with y'all about like what it is that we want. But what we have right now is, for some people, a protection with a very, very narrow definition of who family is. So like I couldn't even take FMLA for my sister if she had a need right now. It's your parents, it's your children. But I think we've seen, like, for me, until I got married very recently, like my friends were my family, but there's no law that makes it possible for a friend to step in, even though
Yeah.
like we know that's how like a lot of people's families are structured, or for members of the LGBTQ community or the disability community. Sometimes it's your friends or it's other people in your life, and like family is, I mean, I think you both probably understand as
Hmm.
dads, like family means a lot more than just like our classic,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
four people
It's not
unit.
always a biological. Yeah.
Yes, it's not always a
It's
bio family. It's by
yeah,
affinity
definitely.
or who you choose. But
Hmm.
anyways, so that's where we were, and that's where we are right now. But where we're going is we're looking to pass paid family and medical leave federally, with a comprehensive program with at least 12 weeks, with a definition of family that includes everybody that we were just talking about who's excluded right now. And to answer the question of where we're going, I want to start with like we've won a really big battle. I think paid leave traditionally was seen as this like left or right, Democrat or Republican issue, but everybody on all sides, because of the pandemic in part, maybe because of like people coming forward with their stories, everybody right now basically agrees that paid leave is a good thing. So we've won a pretty
Good.
big battle, and we've got
That's a huge battle,
it's a
like to
huge
have won. I
battle,
mean,
Well
right?
it
done.
really is.
It's a semantic piece. Like overall, like if you ask any member of Congress, they'll say like, yeah, I think paid leave's a nice idea. And then getting it done is really like where the sausage gets made. And we have a very clear philosophy of what counts as actual paid leave versus a policy that would be
I,
problematic. But like,
I'm curious about
fun.
something though. Like, so
Yeah, paid leave.
the divide on that. Like, I mean, both Republicans and Democrats, they all have families. I mean, what do you think were like some of the things that were I don't know, like kind of holding them back from coming to this like, oh yeah, like we all need this kind of thing. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that to me it seems kind of, I mean, the only thing I come up with is like some sort of weird like earmarks and bills kind of thing. But I mean, was it something as simple as that, or is it, I mean, were there
Yes
personal
and
issues?
no.
Like what's
I
going on
think
there?
it's like it's a couple things, right? Am I allowed to say capitalism is the root cause of the problem? Because it kind of is in
If
this
you are to
country.
me,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, you're talking to Danny right there for sure.
Is that allowed
Yeah,
on this
we opened
podcast?
that we opened that can of worms a couple episodes ago.
Okay, great. Well, so if you think about it though, like the American dream and the American ideal is like you grind, you bring
Mhm.
home your pay, you want to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And so I think there is a mentality of like handouts, which is like a really gross way to talk about public benefits. But I think for a
Yes.
long time, there's been a philosophy, and there still is, especially regarding certain benefits like food stamps, which I worked on in a previous job. There's this idea that like, oh, only those people
Right.
need that, and it's really gross and it's really racist and it comes from like a deeply problematic history, which is a whole other podcast. So I
Mhm.
won't take us all the way down there, but I want to root us in like that's the truth of how we got here, right? But I think what we started seeing with the pandemic is 1 million people died and it impacted our country. And like, what does it mean if we're only as healthy as everyone else? And even in Congress, right? Like a member would test positive and then their staff would test positive and it would spread throughout the building or throughout the floor. And so I think it's partially circumstance, but I also think people like are telling their stories. And I think it's like a cultural shift. The more states that pass this program, the more members of Congress have data for like, okay, well, they've got this in California and they're working on it in Vermont and they're working on it in Minnesota. And so as you get more people who have access to this, it kind of creates like a tidal wave of, oh, we see this working here. We see this working in every single country. And so the concept of paid leave has been socialized a lot. And actually, a really cool thing that we're doing at Family Values at Work, which I think is kind of unique, is we actually now have a culture change department whose entire job is to how do we talk about paid leave in new ways and bring it up for people? Because, like you said, Danny, everybody has a family, or maybe Brock, you said that. I apologize if
It's
I'm
okay.
No, it's okay.
misattributing it, but like we all have families, and even if family doesn't mean like by blood, we all have people we love, or we're going to
Mhm.
get sick. And I think COVID made that a lot more tangible. Like anyone can get sick at any
Yeah.
time, and what does it mean that if you go to work sick, you could literally kill someone? Was where we were with COVID. So I think it was like the crisis situation and also people being brave enough to say like, no, I need this. This actually matters to me. And I think it's like this whole mix of things, but we won a semantic battle. Everybody agrees paid leave is an important thing. But then like how it gets done is really where I come in and my big nerdy Congress brain gets all excited because it matters, right? Like policy is a path. We're talking about capitalism and white supremacy. Policy is a path to course correcting those things. And when you pass an unequitable policy, it's really hard to go back and undo that damage. So we're really clear at Family Values at Work about doing it right the first time.
It's fantastic. It really is. And I love to see the progress that we made. I mean, 30 years ago, like I never used FMLA or anything else like that. And it was that mentality of growing up of, well, that's a handout. And
Yep.
it wasn't, those people, because I came from a very poor family. So food stamps were like, oh, no, we might need those to survive. So it was an understanding of what they're going through. But the idea of, I can work my way out of this. If I work hard enough, if I put in those 60, 70, 80 hours, now that's not necessarily true. But you do get that point where you can get to it and you think, well, hard work is the answer. I don't need a handout, and it's
Right.
either pride or it's ignorance or, racism, whatever it might be. I don't want to get too deep, but the reality of how very valuable that is, if nothing else, just to tell someone you won't get fired. You have to take this time off. You have to take this time. There's no other option. And especially when it is someone that is your family. And then moving it to today where chosen family is probably as prevalent as your blood family.
Mm-hmm.
You have people in your life that you take care of. You mentioned, disabilities, that community where there are people that need you or you need them, vice versa. And what happens if that need becomes too great for you to leave them for a day? I have to stay home today. Okay. You're fired. I mean, that's how it was growing up, and to have
and
just
that's how
that
it
small
is
amount.
for millions.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've learned over the past couple of years is just like different companies have different ways that they use FMLA or like let that their employees get it or whatever. And I mean, we've used it a couple different times because like my wife and I both have had some different surgeries. Like I had she had a surgery on her ankle at one point, and she was like, I'm gonna take FMLA, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean exactly? And for her company, what it means is that she takes the first week of it is like actually like her PTO or whatever, and then after that, I think she got like 60 days, and like part of that, like the first 30 days, it was like they paid her like full salary or whatever, and then after that it was like half or something until like she came back or whatever. It's really nice setup.
I was gonna say that's like actually really surprising and wonderful that they paid her at all, because like legally they're not obligated to.
Oh,
and I'm so glad for your
yeah,
family that they offered part of your salary.
it's a
But it
great
shouldn't be
company.
lucky.
Yeah. No, I know.
Right.
You
Yeah,
shouldn't have
definitely.
to
It
be
should.
lucky. But that
Exactly.
is
It
so
should.
great that she has that.
Yeah. And too, like I said, like that's the thing where it's like, that's what I would like to see, things like that, where it's like people shouldn't have to worry about where their money is going to come from when they're trying to recover from, whether it be a surgery or anything else. Like even when I had surgery, like she was able to take off and take care of me because I couldn't take care of the kids because
Right.
I had my thing. And then the really interesting thing too, and this might be interesting for you, but during COVID itself, this company also had the thing where if you had something to, like, you had to take off for like an abnormality that wasn't like COVID related type of, or like, so for instance, like a couple weeks after COVID got going and we were all home, like homeschooling our kids and going nuts and losing our minds, she told her boss like, hey, I need to give Brock a couple of days to just be off, but I also need to take care of the kids. I'm just going to take a couple of days of PTO. And he's like, oh no, you don't have to do that. We actually have this policy in place where you can actually just, I don't remember what it was. It was like some COVID related policy or something like that. And so
that was a federal policy. And so they
yeah,
actually took it up. That's awesome.
yeah. And so they took it up, and my wife was actually texting me while I was talking to you. She says the first week's PTO, 60 days short-term disability, fully paid, and then dropped to 80% paid after that. So
Wow.
I got my fact checker out here on the other side of the door.
Thank you, fact
Impressive.
checking.
Impressive. So
And that's impressive, which is like, it's frustrating that is impressive, because I would love for the answer to be that she got her full salary for the full amount of time she needed, and the boss said, hey, focus on you. We know you've got your bills. Because like, I think the thing that drives me the craziest is like, okay, sure, companies, folks need to make their bottom line. They maybe don't want to offer you your wages, but like, am I getting a mortgage reduction while I recover from my
Right.
surgery?
No, you're
is my
not.
utility bill being paused? Did gas go down? No. So
right.
The world keeps turning. Yep.
it's this whole cultural reset that we need. And I think it's like going back to the capitalism of it all. Can't help myself here. It literally is this idea that rest is not something that we view as valuable as a
Right.
society, and like that time. And I bet you two can both speak to this better than me, but for my friends who have kids, I'm not a parent at this time, that time when your kid comes into the world, to be with them, God forbid if something has, not gone perfectly and we need to be in the hospital or we need to go to the
Oh,
doctor, you're not thinking about your job. Like how could you ever? Or even
right.
like, this is even so silly. Like, I'm so lucky we have paid sick time. And if we want to get super technical, like there is a difference between long-term paid family and medical leave and paid sick and safe days. And like last week, my allergies were trying to kill me. I couldn't sit up. And in that
Oh
first
no.
job, without feeling dizzy, I'm totally okay now. I took a
Oh,
bunch of
good.
Sudafed and we're
Good.
good. And we love modern medicine and the modern era. But like I had the option to say, I cannot sit up without feeling dizzy. I will catch you tomorrow. Nobody asked a question. But that's because I work somewhere that values rest. And they're like, yeah, of course. If
Yeah.
you're
Mhm.
sitting at your computer really dizzy, you're not going to be performing well. Yeah, go to sleep. But that first job, I went to work sick so many times, or I would like
Yeah.
flex my hours around. I even like was dealing with like a medical mystery at the time. So I was going to the doctor for hours in the middle of the day. And I didn't have time to be worrying about work. Like I
Mm-mm.
didn't really care about my job. I wanted to figure out what was going on with my body.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get to. And millions of people, like, it's not really a choice. And it's so interesting to me when people are like, well, people choose to work sick. Like they could have taken FMLA. I don't think it's really a choice if the question is, are you feeding your kids tonight or taking a sick day? Like,
Right.
that's not really a choice.
No.
Or
No.
can you fix the car to get to your job? That requires having money. So I guess we're not taking the time off to recover from our surgery so we can pay the bills at the end of the month.
Right.
And it requires people to actually listen to lived experience before they write a law to hear how it would help people or hurt people, which is a lot of the work that we do is try to center everything we do in the stories of folks who have had leave and it's been successful or who haven't. So even like what you're talking about, Brock, with your wife and Danny, I know you've got a million examples like we all do. It's the small things,
Sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
I needed to run to CVS to get my flu shot midday. For
Hmm.
some people, they can't even get that baseline preventative medicine because of scheduling. Like,
Yeah.
and
And
you don't think about it.
With
you mentioned stories, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Brock, but
nope, go for it.
I looked on your website and
Yeah.
familyvaluesatwork.org. Everyone should look at that because the stories there are, I mean, like you said, lived experience. Looking at what another human being went through and how it changed their lives in a lot of ways. These stories are, I mean, I only read like 3, but they were amazing. Just the impact that it has, the ability to just say, like with Brock and Corey, yeah, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
I need to take a couple more days off, or yeah, I'm not feeling well enough to sit up today. Granted, it's just allergies. Hopefully it'll go away, 24-hour thing or something. But I can just take that and heal myself, rest,
Right.
take what I need. And those stories are amazing. I encourage anybody that's listening to definitely check out the website and read a couple of those stories. I really, really appreciate that you guys have that up. The pictures are great, but the stories are amazing. So I wanted to make a point of that before we moved
Yeah,
on.
definitely.
Yeah. No, thank you, Danny. And I think, and if anybody's listening has a story, we actually are always looking for folks to share the reality, either anonymously, if it's maybe a current employer. We would love for folks to share their story with us. And I know there's a link at familyvaluesatwork.org because I think that that's, when we get to the nerdy and technical side of how we write a policy, all of that is informed for us by our partners in the 27 states we work in who are talking to folks who maybe were arguing with an employer about job protection or who counts as family or even like how long they're allowed to take off. All of how we've arrived at like what is good policy comes from folks and their stories and when we see things work or don't work. And Brock, I'm sorry, I feel like you were about to say something, but
No,
I
you're
can't
fine.
help but underscore the need for stories because like that's what drives us.
Sammy, he's used to it. I do it all the time. He's
Oh,
It's all
okay.
good. Yeah.
He's like, no, I'll just hold it and wait till Danny, and now I can talk. Yeah, so
all
it's
good.
fine.
All
It's
right.
fine.
No, you're good. So what I was gonna ask was, with this sort of like change in climate of, seeing the um the importance of the family leave and medical leave, pay time, is that like something where the climate has changed at the DC, like at the political level, in the fashion of like, back, I feel like back in the day, like you had all of these politicians who came from money, like they had blinders on as far as to like really what society was like. And now you have a new generation of politicians coming in who maybe they're not coming from money, or maybe they've had the ability to like actually see outside of their box, that there's more going on. I don't know, to me that's how it feels. Like I see some of these different politicians, and it seems like they're not just like, oh, I had all this given to me and now I just want to do this. It's more like, no, I've had to grind, I've had to like
Yep.
blood, sweat and tears through this, and or this situation I had to get through, or whatever, and now like I'm ready to like stand up for everybody else who I know is also trying to do that and build these policies. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. No, I think that that's like a total one-to-one on any political issue. And you have somebody who's making the laws, or even if they're staff, because I want to shout out congressional staff are the people who make the laws go round in this country. Members of Congress are great, but their staff also being folks who have lived experience is essential, right? Because if you've got the person who is the labor director for an influential member of Congress who's actually been in a union and knows what labor looks like and can speak to from the inside, that's transformative. Or if you're meeting with somebody who actually has taken paid family and medical leave. I recently met with somebody who works for a Republican office, and we had a really rich conversation because she was about to have to take bereavement leave because it's everybody's family, right? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter where you come from, what your financial background is, like it leave and caregiving issues are, like, in my opinion, the bedrock of every other issue. You care about the climate? Well, you know what's going to happen to somebody if they're fleeing a fire? They're going to need paid leave so they can get their
Mhm.
affairs in order and take care of their home. You care
Yeah.
about reproductive freedom. Well, it's a circle. Which states have access to, birth control and reproductive services, and who has family leave, and who doesn't? Usually doesn't have family and medical leave. And so all of these issues like layer on top of each other. If you're thinking about healthcare, people probably could afford to pay down their medical debt if they had paid medical leave. And so they
Yeah.
could take that time paid. And that time that they're sitting in the hospital, they're still getting income. Like it all coalesces, in my opinion. And maybe I'm biased because this is the issue I care about the most, but they all kind of lead back to paid
Yeah.
leave. They
Yeah.
I
really do.
I agree. I see that when you described it. Honestly, I agree that it all circles back, like you said. I could see it easily
It's a
being the
circle.
bedrock of it all. I
Yeah,
love
and
it.
even like
It's a
with
good
the
explanation.
opioid crisis, I've heard some horrible, really devastating stories about folks who had family members who, if they could have been paid, probably could have afforded to get into a treatment program.
Yeah.
And for some of those folks, their family members didn't make it because cost was
Oh,
a barrier. And if you're, needing to take a month or two off to be in recovery, but you're not being paid, it's not an option. And it doesn't have to be like this. Every other
right.
major country in the world has gotten it right, and
Right.
12 states in this country have gotten it right, and it's like a tangible impact. I think a lot about like there's a guy named Jerry who lives in California who is a partner with our network, and Jerry lived in California. In California, I feel like people are like, oh, the progressive utopia of California, but even California's program wasn't working because the amount of money folks were getting back if they were a low income worker was so low. Jerry's son was born and he was so excited to take paid leave. And then he got his first check and he's like, I have to go back to work. I'm not getting enough of my income back.
Oh,
And then our partners in California fixed that last year.
Yeah.
And
yay.
Jerry was right
Nice.
at the front of it. So now, effective like literally 5 weeks ago, the wage replacement rates are going to go up in California because people were able to tell their stories and we were able to center that and fix the policy.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
I
yeah,
feel
I
like
think about Jerry a lot.
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like I meet and have been around different homeless people who, when you talk to them about
Mm.
why it is they're in the situation they're in, a lot of times it's like, well, I got sick, or this thing happened and then I couldn't work, and my company fired me because of it, and then like here I am, and if I could have just had the ability to just take some time, like I wouldn't be in this position. And and now they're kind of like, now I can't get a job because here I am, and you're just like, oh my goodness. And it's just, it's sad and it's frustrating to like hear them and be like, I don't even know how to fix your situation because like the system is so broken in that situation. So I I really love the fact that you know you and your team are fighting to fix things because it is so needed.
Fix the bedrock. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
still
it's
love the
I think
bedrock
about
law.
it
I
all
love
the
it.
time.
Yeah.
And even what you were just saying, Brock, like the idea to me that folks can serve our country and they come back, like no matter how you feel about the military,
Right.
they've
Oh
seen
yeah.
some stuff, and folks come back with
Yep.
PTSD. That's another thing. Like if you could get deep therapy and take that time and really truly focus on yourself and getting your mind right, like
Yeah.
how many
Oh,
folks wouldn't be on the streets?
oh
I
yeah.
Right.
it's
The
I think about that so much, and you hear stories about like folks who it's better to be incarcerated than to be on the street because you have access to like mental health services. Um,
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be like that. It's I think about this every single day. It doesn't have to be like that. And I feel like I talk to people a lot like, why do you keep doing it if it's so frustrating and it's not done yet? And it's like, well, if we all stop trying, we're going to
Right.
be stuck living the way we are, and we know it doesn't work, and we know that it can be different. So like, what if we actually tried and made it different?
Hmm.
Yep. And you know, one, I'm a military vet. We're around a lot of military vets. We've got some guys on the board that are military vet or are spouses of military. So there's definitely you know, quite an understanding of um what goes on both during and after. And yeah, I mean, even from the standpoint of some of our fellow dads that we come into contact with who they're home because of disability um
Hmm.
after serving the country, and um the way that they are perceived for not being able to hold down a job and you know taking on the role of being a full-time primary caregiver is it's pretty mind-blowing, honestly.
Yeah.
The stories that Danny and I and
Oh,
many others have
I
heard is
mean,
crazy.
well, that's a whole. I will definitely run off on that one, especially with
no,
Yeah, we
PTSD and
want.
stuff. I don't want to go
or
there, but yeah, it's
but if
and
we
like you
keep it
said,
short, like the dad, it's so interesting to me specifically that you all have a community of stay-at-home dads, and it's something that we constantly are trying to tap into because these issues are seen as like, oh, that's a women's issue, that's a
oh,
children's issue, it's family, it's squishy, like who cares?
Nope.
And you two are the perfect example of like, dads need this, brothers need this. Like,
hmm,
if you're a human being, you need access to
yes,
these issues, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating to me, and I appreciate you naming that because I do. I guess there is stigma. I don't know as much about being a stay-at-home dad, but I would assume there's a lot of stigma that goes into
Oh
that. And like,
yes.
what does it look like to be the one who's stepping into this like traditionally feminine gender role?
it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It really is. Yeah,
Y-
it's been a really interesting thing because we do get a lot of issues with. I maybe back up a little history on that. I facilitate virtual men's mental health support groups, right? And the reason for it is because I needed a support group, and